Welcome to Deepest Lore, where we examine the video game stories hidden so deep, you probably never even noticed they were there. Whether it's due to the story being lost in localization, only being found in the manual, or simply being subtle, obscure, and convoluted, sometimes it's easy to completely miss a story that's right in front of you, especially if it's in a game that seemingly puts little attention to the story and is entirely focused on the gameplay. One series that qualifies for all of these things is Sonic the Hedgehog, specifically the era known as Classic Sonic on the Sega Genesis. Once Sonic moved to 3D around the turn of the millennium, it started getting more of a mixed reception, and one frequent piece of criticism was that the plot started moving in new directions, directly contradicting the world, backstory, and cast of characters that were rather thoroughly fleshed out in other media, such as various cartoons and comic books. Not only that, but they made some very notable changes to what was kept, the most famous example being changing the villain's name from Dr. Robotnik to Dr. Eggman. Except by now, it's fairly well known that Robotnik was always known as Eggman in Japan, and with Sonic Adventure, they merely brought that worldwide, while abandoning the localized adaptations that we got in the West.
Whatever you say, Eggman!
But even if they were going to lose the Freedom Fighters and Planet Mobius, why couldn't they keep it simple, like it was before? Why did they have to add all this ridiculous new stuff about gods and ancient civilizations and make it such a weird, dark fantasy story? The short answer is, because almost none of it was new. In fact, most of it was being built up since the very first Sonic game, and the majority of it was introduced in what are some of the most classic and beloved games in the franchise, if not some of the most classic and beloved games of all time, those being Sonic 2, Sonic 3, and Sonic & Knuckles. For a detailed examination of the plot of the games that take place before Sonic 2, what could be called the South Island Saga, check the link in the description for part 0 of this series. But if you're not interested in a 12-minute video on Sonic Game Gear lore, here's a quick rundown. In the first few Sonic games, we were introduced to Sonic, Eggman, and Tails, as we follow their adventures on the mythical South Island, home of the 6 Chaos Emeralds, whose power causes the island to move throughout the sea. This movement creates an interdimensional torsion known as the Special Stage, in which the Chaos Emeralds wander. But when Eggman's constant disturbance of the Emeralds causes South Island to nearly sink into the sea, the Emeralds are scattered to a new location. With the Emeralds moved away from South Island, its idyllic green hills may finally be safe from Sonic and Eggman's constant battles. But the Emeralds' new location wasn't exactly random, and it wasn't exactly a good place to hide them from Sonic and Eggman either. Because sure enough, our nomadic hero, while flying his biplane, the Tornado, decided to stop right here, on West Side Island. Of course, Eggman isn't far behind him, already knowing that the Emeralds are there, and setting out again to gain them all for his new plan, powering the Death Star. I mean the Space Colony arc. I mean the Death Egg. The Death Egg. Which, by the way, we never actually see the exterior of in this game, barring a tiny, pixelated image on the level select screen, which you need to enter a cheat code to access. The manual presents us with the first big expansion to the Chaos Emerald's backstory, which makes sense since this is the first big sequel in the franchise. The Legend of West Side Island. They say that a very long time ago, the people of this island used mysterious stones to advance their civilization, and they achieved great prosperity. However, when those people tried to use the stones in the wrong way, their prosperity vanished overnight. After that, they say that the gods sealed the stones away somewhere on the island. Noticeably, it says that the stones were sealed on West Side Island, and not South Island. But then again, this is just a legend. Even if there is a great deal of truth to it, it's been passed down since ancient times, and a small amount of corruption is understandable. Or maybe they were originally sealed on West Side Island, and were moved somewhere else at some point before any of these games. Or maybe they just messed up. More relevant are the mentions of how an ancient civilization on West Side Island abused the power of the Emeralds and were destroyed. We already knew they were said to be dangerous, now we know why. It also tells us that there were gods of some sort involved, and trying to hide the Emeralds, giving at least a bit of an explanation for why they keep scattering at the end of every game. The manual goes on to explain that Sonic and Tails originally met on West Side Island, which could be seen as implying that the 8-bit version, despite being released first, actually takes place later. One day, not long after Sonic had been on the island, Sonic noticed something tagging along to his rear. he turned around to see a little fox. When the fox realized he had been seen, he scurried into the shadows under the palm trees. But when Sonic turned and ran off, the fox followed behind him as fast as he could. However, we are also told that Tails followed Sonic for quite some time before the events of Sonic 2. I want to be cool too, he resolved. After that, he started tagging along behind Sonic for all hours of the day. Then came that one early afternoon. This could technically allow for the events of the 8-bit Sonic 2, and Sonic Chaos, to take place before the 16-bit Sonic 2. In fact, in the canon ending of the 8-bit Sonic 2, we do see Tails tagging along behind Sonic for all hours of the day, exactly as described. Either way, as I'll explain shortly, it's unlikely that any games take place between the 16-bit Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So either Sonic 2 for Game Gear happens before Sonic 2 on Genesis, as it was released, or takes place all the way after Sonic and Knuckles. As for the actual content of the game, Sonic runs around West Side Island with Tails, collecting the Chaos Emeralds along the way yet again. But this time you are rewarded with a new ability, Super Sonic, if you collect all 7. But wait, weren't there only 6 before? Well, sure. The 7th Emerald was likely just a flimsy justification for why Sonic couldn't become Super Saiyan in the previous games, but with closer inspection, it makes a bit more sense than you'd think. West Side Island is the original home of the Emeralds, before they were originally scattered by the gods. Perhaps they missed one. Or perhaps they left one on purpose, sealing it away on the island, like the legend said, to keep all 7 from being united and misused together again. If 6 were enough to keep South Island constantly moving and hidden from the rest of the world, then you might as well keep the 7th away from them, just for some extra security. After making their way across the island, Tails is shot down while piloting the tornado to chase Eggman's wing fortress through the sky. However, Sonic manages to board the wing fortress and hitch a ride to the Death Egg. There, he defeats the latest incarnation of Robo-Sonic and confronts Eggman, who, it turns out, is actually faster than Sonic. Though Sonic has no way to get back to Earth, he destroys the Death Egg and sends it plummeting from space. Luckily, Tails had managed to repair the tornado and come to save Sonic at the last second, only to see Super Sonic doesn't need his help. Even though he couldn't become Super Sonic 10 seconds ago when you were fighting the last 2 bosses, and it might have actually been useful. By the way, did you know that this song actually has lyrics? It's called Sweet Dreams by Dreams Come True. The next 2 major games in the series form a set, thanks to the miracle of lock-on technology, and the fact that Sega rushed it out the door when it was only half finished, a trend that will continue until modern day. This time, however, they got away with selling 1 game for the price of 2, because not only did you get the added bonus of playing as Knuckles in Sonic 2, but when you combine the 2 games together, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles are frequently seen as the best game in the series, and one that greatly expands the lore. Contrary to popular belief, Sonic 3 and Knuckles does not happen immediately after Sonic 2. We are in fact told that many days pass. But due to the fact that Eggman is implied to have spent his time since Sonic 2 repairing the Death Egg, and Sonic still has all 7 Chaos Emeralds, it's hard to say that any other games happen between them. Following Sonic 2, Eggman crashed to Earth with his Death Egg. Well, not quite to Earth, but to Angel Island, a mythical island that floats throughout the sky on the power of a magic emerald, and just so happened to be in the Death Egg's path as it fell. The weight of the Death Egg causes the entire island to fall out of the sky, and while Eggman immediately sets out to repair his space station, he just knows Sonic is going to show up eventually, so he ingratiates himself to his new host, Knuckles the Echidna, guardian of the Master Emerald which gives the island the power to float. Eggman convinces the isolated Echidna that Sonic is in fact out to steal the Master Emerald, and Eggman is here to try to stop him. Knuckles is already paranoid, as even before he met Eggman, looking at this huge, round, egg-like object, he felt himself jump. Does this huge egg belong to the legendary dragon? There is no doubt that this egg was the one that appeared in the writings on the altars of the Chaos Emeralds, the one that was to bring catastrophe to the island. Perhaps Knuckles interpreted the writings in murals to mean that the dragon was in fact this glowing animal figure, rather than this man who was perhaps protecting the emerald. Or perhaps Knuckles is just incredibly naive, and will fall for this trick no matter how many times Eggman tries to pull it.
Oh no! Knuckles, don't tell me Eggman tricked you again!
In Knuckles' defense, he is a pretty isolated guy, as later games would emphasize.
As far back as I can remember, I've been living here on this dark island, always guarding the Master Emerald from anything that could harm it.
The echidna is a particularly interesting choice for this role, as it is one of only 2 mammal species on Earth that are born from eggs. Being a monotreme, it is possible that Knuckles literally spent his entire life alone, aside from the small animals that live on the island. Either way, Knuckles is successfully tricked, and sets out to be a general pain in the ass when Sonic eventually shows up. Later, Tails is on a faraway island, but still picks up a reading from Angel Island on his Emerald radar. He connects this with a large wave he saw recently, and goes to find Sonic and investigate with him. At the same moment, while relaxing on the beach, Sonic found a small ring washed up on shore. Sonic looked at the ring carefully, and noticed some ancient characters carved on it. The ring reminded Sonic of a legend he once heard about a mystery island. In an ancient time, the Mystery Island was part of the main continent. A people with an extraordinary culture inhabited it. That civilization had built a peaceful and happy society using the energy of something they called the Mighty Stone. But at a certain point, a faction of dark-minded elders tried to steal the energy of the stone, and by accident made that energy explode. The civilization was wiped out in a second, erased from history. Time passed, and a god descended from the sky to the newly created Mystery Island. The Sky God restored part of the civilization on the island, and threw the mighty stone into the open sky. Here we establish the idea that Angel Island was originally part of a greater landmass, and connecting this with the backstory from Sonic 2, we can infer that the greater landmass was West Side Island. The connection between these 2 lands would later be integral to Sonic Adventure, as would the dark-minded elders. We are also introduced to the Sky God, so that's who's been hiding the emeralds all this time. Who is it? Well, there's a water/destruction god, a god of imagination, an ancient robot who was called a god of wrath, a fire/light/darkness/time god, and 2 earth gods, but no named Sky God. However, there is a sky-based civilization that angered some god or other and was brought down to Earth and destroyed. Was it the same Sky God? Or maybe it was some other character who comes from the sky with godlike powers. Probably not. Moving on. Tails pilots the tornado to Angel Island, Super Sonic flying beside him. Apparently the Sky God let Sonic keep his emeralds after Sonic 2, perhaps because Eggman and his Death Egg plot were not truly defeated yet. Super Sonic finds Angel Island, and promptly gets knocked out by Knuckles, who helps himself to the Chaos Emeralds. Now, you might be wondering how exactly Super Sonic gets so utterly defeated in one punch, but again, with closer inspection, this makes sense. Remember, Knuckles is the guardian of the Master Emerald. It takes until Sonic Adventure 2 to say it explicitly, but the Master Emerald has the ability to cancel out the power of the Chaos Emeralds, and this is actually shown earlier. In Sonic Adventure 1, it is used to seal Chaos, who has absorbed the power of the Chaos Emeralds. In Sonic and Knuckles, the Chaos Emeralds are depowered when placed on the pillars around the Master Emerald. And here, in Sonic 3, the Guardian of the Master Emerald is able to break through Super Sonic's Chaos Emerald-powered invincibility and knock the emeralds right out of him. Plus, it's called the Master Emerald, so what else is it going to do if not control the other emeralds? Knuckles continually stands in Sonic and Tails' way, even after they successfully disrupted Eggman's relaunching of the Death Egg and caused it to crash back into the island. While he can relaunch it from where it landed, in Lava Reef Zone, Eggman decides he needs a greater power source, and sets out to steal the Master Emerald while Knuckles is distracted fighting Sonic and Tails, in front of a mural of the prophecy that convinced him Sonic was the bad guy in the first place. It is only once he does so that Knuckles finally realizes he's been tricked, and helps his former foes reach the relaunched Death Egg, but only after they fight Eggman's latest Sonic robot, Mecha Sonic. Sonic and Tails leave Mecha Sonic shorted out as the Sky Sanctuary on which they battled crumbles around them. They then make their way aboard the Death Egg, which they, of course, destroy. As Eggman makes one final attempt to escape with the Master Emerald, Super Sonic gives chase and defeats him, fulfilling the prophecy seen on the mural. Tails arrives in the tornado to save Sonic as he falls from space, and they return the Master Emerald to Knuckles, causing Angel Island to finally rise out of the water. But wait, some fans may say. Super Sonic? Chaos Emeralds? Why wouldn't the final fight involve Hyper Sonic and the Super Emeralds? Shouldn't we be counting the 100% ending here? Well, no, and here's why. Sonic & Knuckles is perhaps one of the first games to involve post-credit scenes, long before they were even particularly popular in movies. While the 100% stinger for any character is merely a nice animated logo of the game, the stinger for if you get 7 Chaos Emeralds but less than 7 Super Emeralds involves a single Egg Robo, a type of enemy launched from the Death Egg, rising out of the rubble of his smashed comrades. This is not merely a sign that you didn't get a good enough ending. It is in fact a teaser for the second half of the game's story, Knuckles' story. Knuckles' campaign in this game is not simply an alternate story, but in fact a sequel to Sonic and Tails' campaign. The Egg Robo we see in Sonic and Tails' Stinger comes back to antagonize Knuckles, though this cutscene is only seen if the games are not locked on. This Egg Robo also replaces Eggman as the boss in every level, barring an occasional glitch in Mushroom Hill Zone, and an oversight in Flying Battery Zone. Since this takes place after Sonic and Tails' story, there's no Death Egg to cause Angel Island to crash into the ground, as seen in Angel Island Zone, where the sea background seen in Sonic and Tails' story is now replaced with sky. Indeed, when Knuckles reaches Launch Base Zone, there is no Death Egg being fixed in the background, and we never witness its failed launch at the end of the zone. Without that failed launch, the Death Egg never crashes into Lava Reef Zone. In Sonic's version of that level, he sees the Death Egg in the background, powering up and relaunching as he advances through the Hidden Palace and onto Sky Sanctuary Zone. By the time Knuckles gets this far, the Death Egg is long since destroyed, and no traces of it are left. But one thing we can see from Sky Sanctuary Zone which we couldn't see in Sonic and Tails' story is Angel Island floating in the background. During the entirety of Sonic and Tails' story, the island was in the water. Once the Death Egg was no longer weighing down the island and the Master Emerald was returned by Sonic, we saw Angel Island rise out of the sea and return to floating in the sky, where it is now. However, we can notice that the island is currently unstable, and is beginning to fall again. While Sonic and Tails definitively destroyed the Death Egg, they were not so thorough in their defeat of Mecha Sonic, who was seen only shorted out as Sonic and Tails escaped their battleground on the Sky Sanctuary crumbling around them. This leaves Mecha Sonic free to challenge Knuckles, in a now much smaller Sky Sanctuary Zone, but only after he betrays and destroys his comrade Egg Robo. It's really too bad that Eggman wasn't around to witness this robotic version of Sonic becoming independent and treacherous, because that's probably something he should look out for in the future. Like Sonic and Tails, Knuckles also manages to short out Mecha Sonic, but rather than quickly running off to confront Eggman and the Death Egg, he stays to witness the robot harness the Master Emerald's power and gain his own super form. Now we can see that it was Mecha Sonic's removal of the Master Emerald from Angel Island that was causing it to teeter and fall. Of course, this isn't enough to stop Knuckles from finally putting an end to the robotic rival, this time actually making him explode, along with the last remnants of Sky Sanctuary Zone. Luckily, Sonic is flying by in the tornado, ready to save Knuckles, since, of course, they had already become friends at the end of Sonic's story. Knuckles skips the final zone of the game, Death Egg Zone, because, as we've shown exhaustively by now, the Death Egg has already been destroyed. He instead goes straight back to Angel Island and restores the Master Emerald, causing the island to stop falling before it can again crash into the sea. And with that, the Death Egg saga is finally over. But the story of the Chaos Emerald's origins, and the histories of Angel Island, West Side Island, and their gods and civilizations, would be continued and largely concluded in the next major entry in the series, Sonic Adventure. Most people seem to think that that was the first Sonic game to introduce all of these plot points, but everything I've covered so far is from no later than 1994, only 3 years after the first Sonic game, and 4 years before Sonic Adventure. While that covers the majority of what would become the core of the series' backstory, there were plenty of spin-off games in the classic Sonic era that introduced many lasting characters and even had their own story arcs. So tune in next time when we cover the rest of the classic Sonic games, including Sonic CD, and further examine some of video games' deepest lore.